that will clarify what they have in the agreement and then some other recommendations to clarify that. They do maintain,
Okay.
they spray the exotics along the shoreline right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that they've addressed this yet, but we are incorporating in Pelican, the maintenance of our fish gates, which is a biannual cleaning and inspection. We've already got a contract language for them to service our aerators, our compressors, and our diffusers on whatever the maintenance schedule is that comes from the manufacturer. So we've got prices for all that, and that will go in the next bid package that we put out, whether it's Aquagenics or XYZ, whoever gets our next contract. And we've been with Aquagenics long enough that it's appropriate, once we get this aeration in, to rebid our community. I mean, let's just see how competitive they're being.
Okay. Anything else, Bob?
No,
Okay.
that's it.
Diane, could you get Chris on the phone, and, because we want to move into a discussion of the finances and the investment of our funds.
It's not right.
John, I hope you're still there.
Yeah, you are.
You're still there.
But
That can work.
Hello?
hello?
Yep, okay.
Yeah, Bob's here.
John's still there, all right.
Okay, 1 minute.
Yeah, yeah, he's right there.
He's at the cul-de-sac here?
Yeah.
Between these two houses, it's transformers, the power out, through easement, and come around the lake banking building. And put the compressor over here, or over here, or here right now. That's that one.
Hello?
Hi, Chris.
Okay.
Hi.
Help.
You
Yes.
probably thought
Hi,
we
how are
forgot you.
I see all you guys on my computer screen.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Uh, John and Bob, you still there?
Hello?
Okay, everybody's with us.
Compressor, which may-
Okay, Chris, we completed the ponds discussion, and so now we're ready for the financial report, and then to get into our discussion of cash and interest rates and all of that kind of thing.
Okay, that's fine. Is Ameriscape in the audience? By any chance?
Yes, they are.
Do you wanna just go through the irrigation repairs and maintenance, so they don't have to sit through the rest of this?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
We'll skip to that item.
Okay, so number 7 was irrigation repairs and maintenance, and if you remember the last time, we were debating whether or not we wanted to, sign the addendum, to our contract for $625 a month. And then, I think it was recommended that I check with the golf club, since the golf club had upgraded their system to see if, their repairs, fund, expenses have actually went down since they had replaced their equipment prior to us replacing our equipment. That's where Ameriscape and Sarah come in, because I basically got a response back via Sarah that said that, the golf club's, irrigation is completely different than the HOA's. So that's why Sarah suggested that maybe Ameriscape can explain the differences between the two systems and why we could not get a cost comparison.
Okay. Javier, are you the person to do this for us? You could come up,
Yeah, could we-
come up here, and do we need to hand Javier one of these?
The mic should.
Does the mic work?
The mic on?
works, yeah.
Okay.
And we're talking about the pump system, correct?
Chris?
Chris?
Okay, hang on a minute.
I believe so. Whatever was replaced earlier this year, which I guess was some, I don't remember what Tracy called it. Hold on, let me look back in my notes.
Can you hand me that mic?
Tracy said that something was replaced in January, and that was probably why our repairs and maintenance was so much lower.
Oh, she was talking about the wet treatment?
Yes, it was called wet something.
Yeah. And my understanding, on that is that, is basically, you know, to treat the bacteria that comes into the water, which creates, snails going downstream in the system. I think it's fairly new to be able to determine exactly how effective it is, because I know the one thing that was recommended by the vendor was that flush out systems were installed in various locations throughout the community, and through working with Tracy, we only got approval for 2 installations in Pelican, which were on the master property. Individual communities would have to install additional flush out systems, and I believe she passed the information to the communities at one of the president board's meeting. The reason for that was because as the system continues to work, it's gonna start cleaning the residue from within inside the lines, killing any bacteria, which is the snail. So basically, one example that I can give you is Treviso and Aviano. Those are not on a loop system. They have a dead end. Basically, their lines would end up, the last portion of it would end up getting all the debris and getting clogged. Those communities that have no loop system would be probably the most critical ones, because they would basically end up with all the debris at the end of the lines. But it was also recommended that, you know, any of the communities that are in the farthest locations, Trentino States, Tree Line, Toscana, Villaggio, Tiberio, Portofino, Verona, and Sevilla, and then Palazzo and Avila should, you know, install flush out valves, so that basically throughout, especially in the summertime, that the pump runs very little, they basically set for like 15-20 minutes, so they basically automatically flush out. I don't know if this information was passed through Tracy,
Yeah,
but
I guess-
How much does that cost to put in?
I think we had given them our cost, because it's gotta be tapped directly into the main line. I think it had, I'm gonna say anywhere from about $350 to $400 to install.
Did most of the communities install them?
No, nobody installed them.
Nobody's
Only the
installed.
masters installed 2 of them.
I guess the question is, are the communities responsible for that, or are we, do we know?
That I couldn't answer.
Yeah, I know, that's not something, I'm not asking you that question, I'm throwing it
Uh-huh.
out.
But,
Well, given that the community is responsible for the irrigation, and the
Yes.
irrigation lines get clogged up, this is a possible mitigation of that, so it'd be
Yeah.
up to the communities, I would guess.
and especially as we're coming out of the rainy season and into the fall, where the irrigation is gonna be back up and running again, what that's, you know, the effect of it is gonna be, is we're gonna have a lot of heads, rotors, and valves getting clogged. So you most likely are gonna get a lot of phone calls, you know, to the vendors, with valves getting stuck, because the snails basically are clogging the diaphragm, so the valve's not able to close back down. And I think that's gonna be, you know, it was emphasized, you know, through the band, that it was critical to install the flush out valves. And that would include portions of the newer communities also that are not on the CDD portion of it.
And the flush-out valve will open according to some schedule also?
Basically, that's gonna have to be set up remotely, because we're not, the communities that we're able to tie it into the existing Toro system, we can program it through the Toro. But the ones that have no additional cables, especially the older communities where the cables, they may not be any additional cables to install a valve, is gonna have to be installed on a unique, which is a battery operated time clock. So therefore, it's also gonna have to be monitored, and to make sure that the battery doesn't go out, therefore, basically the flush out valve becomes useless.
Has this been communicated to the various communities?
I had a conversation with Trace in regards to this,
Yeah.
and I know it was at least communicated to her, and she was gonna communicate it to the communities, because we actually installed two flush out valves.
You should bring it up at the meeting on
Yes,
Monday.
yes, Sarah, were you aware of this at all?
So,
Trudy, who's one of the presidents.
Yeah.
Harvey, who's another one, obviously, they don't,
Yeah.
neither one of them knows about it.
Yeah, yeah, certainly, we weren't aware with it.
and as the system continues to work, it's supposed to be, we're supposed to have increase in pressure, because there'll be a lot more water flowing through, because there'll be less debris being collected on the inside of the lines.
Yeah.
But he said, talking to the gentleman that was installing, he said we should be able to see results probably somewhere about 12 to 18 months.
And I guess the question I would raise, and I'm showing my ignorance, do we, as the CDD, have responsibility for lines where we would have to do this? Do we have,
Well, anything that the master, well, I don't know, that's a
Yeah,
good
yeah,
question.
yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
the answer. Maybe John knows the answer to that.
The CDD does not get involved with the original irrigation system. We don't supply that water.
Oh, yeah, you
Oh,
don't
no,
supply,
no,
no,
no, we
no.
understand.
But, and I don't think we maintain it under that Exhibit B.
but we are paying, we as the CDD are apparently paying for repairs
Hmm.
that are being
Yeah.
caused or could be caused by this problem
On the common property.
on the common property.
Now,
Oh, I see, yeah,
do the valves that have been installed take care of most of the common property?
No.
Okay,
Uh,
because you said two had
There's
been installed.
one in tree line that was installed because that's basically at the intersection of tree line in Colonial,
Okay.
which is the farthest location. I mean, that one I think was more critical because that's basically comes to a dead end and the water basically goes nowhere. That was installed within months after the system went into effect. The second one was installed on Cypress Grove.
Well,
Okay.
it seems to me that we need to do a couple things here. One, Sarah, that I think this needs to be definitely brought up at the president's meeting.
Sure.
And maybe have Javier there to explain it. But the other thing we have to determine is, are there places that we as the Master Association or the CDD Master Association should be installing these things as well? Can we make a determination of whether there are any more of those? I think that's,
Yeah, things down Pelican Preserve Boulevard.
Well, I
that
think
type of
based,
thing.
at least based on the conversation that I had with
Yeah.
the gentleman, is the more flush out valves that you have,
yeah.
the more debris is gonna be flushed out of the lines.
Right.
And eventually, over a period of time, I mean, they're not gonna be necessary, need to have as many. But initially, as the buildup in the lines slowly starts to come off, the amount of debris inside the lines, I mean, can potentially, cover, or clog a lot of the pop-ups and rotors. And I know I have dealt with this in another community down in Naples that installed the same system. And, the guys can spend hours just removing rotors and just flushing them out.
Yeah.
So-
Let me ask a question. If my community decides they want to go ahead.
Nancy, I can't hear you.
Yeah, your
Oh,
microphone's
my
over there now.
microphone's gone. If my community, say, decides to install one of these flush-out valves, is that going to work for us, or because we're upline or downline from many other communities that have not? Is that a problem for us? Does this all have to be done at the same time to have, for it to be effective?
It was recommended it be done on, the ends of the communities. Primary reason is because the water, for example, in Portofino comes in in a loop. So you have two different locations where the water comes into the community. So if you place it in the center, basically the idea is that everything's gonna flow to one single location and flush it out.
But,
So it wouldn't make any difference whether Bellagio did it or not?
No,
It wouldn't affect
no.
Portofino.
Yeah, it would affect your community, and in the long run, it would affect Portofino.
In the long run,
In the
but,
long
Yes.
run.
but they could go ahead on their own and do this.
Oh, yeah,
Would it be
absolutely,
beneficial
yeah.
to them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they can install it anytime, yes.
I guess, as I said, I think two things. This needs to be presented to the various communities, and it doesn't sound like it's a excruciating large expense for the communities to
well,
do.
how much is it?
But
It's
you said
anywhere
$3 to
from
$4
about three to $400.
$300 or
max.
$400 each.
Per community. I mean, if you see it as a whole community, it's fairly inexpensive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
other thing is, though, I think, Javier, you need to look at the system that serves the common areas to
Mhm.
see where we might need to put these in, and
Different.
communicate that back to Sarah,
Okay,
okay?
definitely.
well, you know, if we need to do something more than the two that have already been done,
Right,
we need to know about it.
okay.
All right, Phil,
Yeah, John, go ahead.
John, Grega.
Yep.
You had asked Sarah if she was aware of this, and she must have responded, but I didn't get.
She did, she
her
was not aware, apparently this is not something that Tracy transferred to her when she left.
Okay, and is this Javier that's
Yes,
giving this
yes,
presentation?
yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure this is exact, I mean, there is a difference. The golf course did install a special filtering system for the golf course, and then there was a filtering system also installed in January at the pump station for all the residents. I think we're talking two separate items that Javier is presenting, am I correct?
It sounds like two.
Well, it sounds like you're talking about two separate items, I don't know that Javier is.
I mean,
The
if we're-
question that came up at the last meeting was,
Yeah.
did the golf course save any money with the system that they installed with the filter, the new filtering system? You know,
And
all
that's
we were
what,
looking
and that's
for
what,
was a
well, that's what,
percent of savings.
Tracy, that's what Tracy had reported, months earlier, is that the new system for the filtering system, she called it wet something, was installed in January. And when I
Correct,
contacted
no, that
Sarah,
was for all the,
there-
I mean, a new system for the residents. So the question from the golf course, I would hope they would know whether that new system gave them a percent of savings in replacement of heads versus, you know, for the same thing with us. This, the thing that Javier is explaining,
Some specific item.
I'm a little not confused, but I think it's a great idea that maybe each community do it.
Okay. So let me, this $14,000 item, is that what you're talking about, these valves? Or is that something different?
The wet well treatment system.
Excuse me?
The wet well treatment system.
Wet well treatment system, is
That
this
was
different?
installed. Joe did the same thing with the golf course.
Sarah, can you come up?
Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanna know, the
Yeah.
valves that you're talking about, these clean-out valves, is that what that is? Is that something, is that different?
To that.
See,
That is that.
He met with the vendor, and the vendor suggested these flush out valves be
Right.
installed with this system.
addition
to
as
this,
part
in
of-
addition
yeah,
to
With
in
that.
addition to.
Okay,
'Cause
so
the
there is two
treatment's
different
going
things
through,
we're talking about.
flushing
And I
out.
was there when they were
System,
installing the system, so.
Okay.
And so he's recommending everybody get on the flush out to get them maximize the benefits of this system that was installed.
And this system was installed?
It was installed.
Okay.
It's just, Joe couldn't give us comparative pricing because their system's so different from ours. And they had brand new pumps and brand new this, and they run it different, bigger heads, different, you know, there was just no way to get a comparable exchange of what they spend and what they saved.
Okay. John, did you hear all that?
All right, well, yeah, so this is a supplement to what the
Yes.
golf course installed. So
That's
that
correct.
we are hoping that what they did will help us in their new system. And the additional flush out valves for each community is an additional recommendation to possibly save money on the heads. Okay.
That's correct, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we're back to what I said. We need to make sure that the communities understand this, and then we need to have Javier do some kind of a survey to see where we might need to do some in the common areas.
correct. And in that regard, my point was, is we really could not get a cost comparison of the irrigation repairs and maintenance because Joe said that the systems were so different.
Yes.
Okay.
Year to date, we have spent almost $5,700 through August of a $9,700 budget. So right now, we are $4,000 under budget for irrigation repairs and maintenance.
But the installation of these flush-out valves should reduce our maintenance costs, is that correct? Is that,
Hopefully.
I would believe
Javier?
so, and that's what it sounds like.
Long-term, yes.
long-term, yes, he says, okay,
Mhm.
all right. Okay,
So I think what we were trying to determine as a committee was, is it worth the $625 per month to have a maintenance agreement, which comes to $7,500 a year,
Yep.
or do we take our chances and just pay as we go along?
Self-insure.
Right, so I think right now, I think we go ahead with the $600 thing, have these valves installed, and then follow along and see if things change.
Mhm.
Because Javier, he's saying it's 12 to 18 months before you start seeing the benefits.
Basically, that's the length of time, that at least he explained to me that it's gonna take for
Yeah.
for all the debris that's been collected
Sure.
over the years inside the lines to slowly start coming off.
Mhm.
So the replacement rate is not gonna change much for a year.
You wanna talk to the vendor?
What? Oh, talk to the, yeah. I don't know, I mean, they're,
Or maybe the presidents do.
Huh?
Maybe the presidents do.
well, yeah, I don't, I guess, would they need these contracts too, or I guess some of them are paying, they're all paying as they go, I think, most of the communities, I believe, are paying.
What,
Hmm?
for repairs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think, certainly the communities I've had contact with have been paying as they
I
go.
mean, we budget 5,000 a year for repairs.
Hmm?
We
Yeah.
budget 5,000 a year
Yeah.
for repairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Things get done.
Yeah,
Okay.
And if you remember, when I did my analysis over the past 4, I think, years, I can't remember exactly, but I think it was, we spent way more than what we budgeted or what we would have paid in an agreement. And then 2 years, including this year, we were under the $7,500 that we would have paid. So we're kind of half and half over the past 4 years
mhm.
on whether we would have benefited from the agreement or not.
I think most people will find the same thing, from year to year, there's a big fluctuation in repairs.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
irrigation.
Okay,
So it's gonna be hard to tell, actually,
I think so. Nancy, any comment? Okay. I guess, I'm inclined to say we should go ahead and just self-insure as we have been
Yeah.
under the circumstances.
Right, that's
Yeah.
what I would.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we'll see how this process,
So we don't wanna enter in this?
we don't want to.
We don't?
Yeah,
Okay.
don't. Well, that's what that's where I come out, I guess. Herb? Others, John, where do you come out on that? Bob? And then-
I would say keep it like it is.
Yeah, okay, John, how about you?
I agree.
Yeah, okay. So I think we will continue to self-insure as we obviously have for a number of years, and as most of the communities are, but we still want to proceed with, seeing what the story on the flush-out valves. Have you-
Within the common areas, correct?
Within the common
Yeah, for
areas,
us,
that's
yeah.
correct, and
Okay.
and Sarah's gonna communicate, or we will communicate at the next president's meeting to the presidents about needing it in the various neighborhoods. Javier, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Chris, you're still on.
Yes, okay, so we'll go back up to number 4 now.
Yep,
Okay, so you have probably a lot of pieces of paper from me for this one. So where do you want me to start? With the August report?
yes,
Or, okay.
let's do the August report very quickly and then move on to the, numbers 4 and 5 are effectively the same thing. Or 5 and,
Yeah, yeah.
5 and 6.
And, I-
Seven, six.
and,
5 and
and
6.
I actually have some information on 6 in addition to whatever Herb has.
Okay,
Also, I talked with Stephen Bloom yesterday on the telephone. Okay, so the first thing you should see is my balance sheet as of June 30th.
Yes.
It's not as of August 31st because my balance sheet always ties into the latest Severin Trent report.
Yep.
And the latest Severin Trent report that I have received as of, I haven't received July yet. So as of today is June 30th.
okay.
Okay, so all those cash balances tie back out to what the CDD board sees when they review the financials.
Okay,
The next page is the profit and loss for just August.
yeah,
And because I didn't have the August income, it all looks like a loss, which is basically, this is just showing you what our expenses were for the month of August. Because you thought that it was very difficult to see like year-to-date budget or you didn't think that it really provided any benefit. So I changed the way the reports look, and so this just shows you a clear picture of what our expenses for the month of August were.
Okay.
And the next page is where you see the budget, and this is for the year-to-date budget. I changed this. I had done the budget previously, basically taking, say, $600,000, dividing by 12 and putting, 1/12 in every month. So instead, you didn't think that those were very beneficial. So what I've done is I created the entire budget. So when you see October, the first column is October 2014 through August 15th, because that's when our expenses are.
Mine shows July.
That
July.
column is through August
We've
15th.
got
When
July.
it says
It's
budget,
July.
that means that is our total year budget, not just the budget through August of 2015.
Chris,
But
just-
that is the complete year's budget.
Chris, just a quick comment that the handout that we got from Diane here apparently says July 15th.
Okay, that wasn't the latest one. I think I sent the August ones one day last week. I
Okay.
believe I sent them on September 1st.
Yes, you
Okay,
did.
there's one that says October 14
Mine says October, yeah.
to August 15, yeah, okay.
Right.
Got it, okay.
Okay, that's the latest
Yeah,
one.
but
And
that's-
then,
yeah, look
and
toward
so
the
that
end.
one,
Yeah,
the budget column is the year-to-date, but, is the total year's budget, not just the year-to-date budget.
Okay,
Okay, and then when you see the over or under budget column and then the percent of budget, that shows exactly, for the year, not just through August 15th. So I thought that this would, be more beneficial than the reports that you didn't like from prior months. Does everybody follow that?
okay,
Okay?
so,
So if, for example, if you, forget the income section, because we don't usually budget for income, that comes from the CDD.
Right.
If you go to the first, expense under, residence operating and maintenance, 706501 landscape contract, and you see Cypress Grove, if you follow that across,
yes,
we have spent $0 for Cypress Grove for landscape, but we have budgeted for the entire year $49,176. Therefore, we're under budget by $49,176.
yeah,
That's how you read this report.
yes, right, got it. Okay, so,
Okay, so does this seem like it's more beneficial than the prior reports?
I don't know.
Okay.
It seems, and did we say that I just found the prior reports kind of confusing, at least, this is just my personal comment. But it seems to me that if I guess they're confusing because we have expenses that shift from one year to another and all sorts of stuff in there that makes it very confusing, but it seems to me that a year to, a budget that's the same as the period we're reporting on would probably be more beneficial, which is taking you back to what you were doing before, is that right?
That's correct. But see, when we budget, though, we were budgeting, taking a budgeted amount. For example, with the Cypress Grove, we would have taken that $49,176 divided by 12 and then multiplying that by 9 months.
Yes,
or
right.
10 months or whatever.
Mhm.
And that's what I didn't think. Prior to them being in QuickBooks, because I can manipulate the data however you want to see it. But prior to QuickBooks, we always had the total year's budget and then the year-to-date expenses side by side. So that's why I thought you wanted to go back to what you were used to seeing through Excel.
I like this.
You like this?
Yeah, I like this.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay?
Yep,
Okay? And then if you turn to the last page,
Yep.
you will just see once again that there's the total for waterways has been added to the bottom.
Mhm.
And so therefore you can see that the total waterways budget, what we've spent so far, what has been budgeted, and then the difference.
right.
Okay?
And so bottom line, right now, we still have through August, so for the last, 2 months? We're 690,000 under budget on expense?
Well, through August for 760, you might be looking at the
Oh,
July
760, yeah,
report.
okay.
760, it's income.
That says net ordinary income,
because that is taken into account all of the receipts that have been received, all the
Yeah.
assessments, including, and that is also including the fire impact fees of $79,000.
Yeah, right, okay, so,
Because I get all my income numbers from
Yeah.
the CDD reports,
yeah,
So-
right.
from Severn Trent, but, because I have no idea of how to
But-
compute the income. I take all the income from Stevens reports.
I'm,
So the income that is showing is actually showing through June. It's not through August because I don't have his August reports yet. So the income is through June, but the expenses are through August.
I see.
Because I have our HOA expenses through August.
All right, so, Chris, this is Ron. I'm looking at total expense, okay?
Yes,
And it shows a minus $690,429.
right.
Okay. Does that mean we're under our budget to date? We're under by $690,000?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying, that,
Because if you look at the big part of that, one line up above that,
yes,
that's a big part of it is we have included the waterways, which we have never included before.
Sure.
But everybody had agreed that we wanted to see that all in one report.
Sure.
So if you just go up one line, the waterways budget is actually under budget by $364. That is inclusive, that is included in that $690.
Sure, but Bob has plenty of places to spend any extra money, right?
That's correct.
I don't think
Bob's
that's,
got-
I don't think
Bob's
that's
got
any.
Lots and lots of money.
Okay, what I'm trying to focus in on is the stuff that the rest of us need to look at. Okay, and I think what I'm hearing from you, we should take the 690,000,
right.
subtract out the 364,000, okay, and that
That would
remainder.
leave you 326.
Right.
And we're under budget
Okay,
right now.
Right,
Right.
so for the year, I'm thinking we've got $326,000 to get us to the end of the year.
That's correct.
That's right,
Good.
and that's what I was saying with this, yeah, with the 690.
So my,
Now, if you want me to, I can put the waterways on a separate, financial, and then you could, or maybe I'm not sure if I can add a line to this one or not, but, I can try to put them completely on their own separate financials so that you do see the clearer picture and you would see 326, 208.65 instead of the 690.
Yeah,
And you wouldn't have to do the
Or if
math.
you just had a line in there that
Yeah.
said total excluding waterways,
yeah, something like that.
Okay,
yeah.
all right, I can try to do that.
Yeah, I think that would
So my
help.
next question is based on your best understanding of what bills we are expecting to get. Okay, how much of that 326,000 has been allocated or will be allocated before the end of the year?
Okay, well, that's when you need to go to my fund summary report. Does everybody have that one?
Hold on, let's see where that is.
Yep,
That one starts with a cash balance of $2,048,941.74.
yep,
Good, good. That's the
Yep.
next page.
yep. Well, it's not the next page,
Where is it?
it's not the next,
That's the fund summary.
that,
Okay, all right, I'm here.
well, you're, Chris, we actually got two things with funds on them, which, can be a little confusing. The cash report that you sent us, the Pelican Reserve cash balances starts with 91,479.
Hey, before we go any farther, you know, Chris,
That's just a balance sheet. It actually ties back into the fund summary
Oh,
report.
okay.
Chris, this is Herb.
Yeah.
Before we go any farther, we're all spending a lot of time looking for different pages up here. It would be helpful in the future if somehow you label them numerically or alphabetically, so that you say,
Okay.
go to page A, or page C, or page 5,
Okay,
okay?
but anyway,
Okay, I can do that.
but the funds report you're talking about is the one that has 2,048,000 as the top line?
Yes,
Six,
yes.
the 630.
And it actually should be labeled on the top. When you print it out, it should have printed a label that says, fund summary.
Okay, but it's the one with the cash balance at June 30th.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
I don't have one that looks like that.
well,
It doesn't print out that title.
it doesn't print out the title, Diane tells me.
Oh, okay.
There it is.
What you have is how it printed.
She's got two separate things.
Yeah, they're two separate things that look
Yeah.
similar. but this is,
Okay.
this is one,
This is the one that you would ask me to do,
Yes.
like, projects,
Right.
percentage of completion, what expected projects,
yes,
to kind of whittle away at what we have left.
right,
Yeah, I think you got it.
right.
That's, that seems like it is there.
But that's it.
Is that the same thing?
Yeah, 6/30/15, 6/30/15, yeah, 2048,
Okay.
yeah, that's it. This looks a little different. Okay, I think we're all on the same sheet. There's no paint. on it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, this is more difficult when I'm not there, sorry.
Yes. Go ahead,
So basically, we take the cash balance at 630. The 2,048,000 is not
630.
including what we already have sitting in reserves,
Right.
okay?
And it
this-
doesn't, and it also doesn't include the fire, right?
Oh, let me see about that.
Cause that's,
No, that does include, that does include that 79,000.
It does
or
include the
whatever the number
79,000.
is.
Okay.
That does include it.
okay,
What the fire is not included is if you see on the fund summary where it says projected revenue for fiscal year 2015, that 13,000,
yeah,
that's basically taking our total assessments and minusing out what we've taken in through June 30th.
Okay.
And so far, we're expected to receive another 13,771 based on the board's reports, income report,
okay.
of expected income. So that's where I'm getting that number from.
Mhm.
Okay, then we have to back out of that 2,062,000 number, we have to back out, now this is a number that we need to discuss, and hopefully Bob's still on the line that we can discuss this bonds refi.
Yeah, I'm
Ever
here.
since I took the reports over from Ned, we've always had an amount sitting there loosely designated for ponds of 187,604, and then, of course, our fiscal year 2015 reserves of the 245,955. We subtract those two numbers from the 2,062,000, and we're left with an operating cash balance of 1,006,000. Now, we have 3 months remaining of expenses for both the HOA and the CDB, because remember, these cash balances are as of June, so we have July, August, and September, and our year ends on September 30th. So I'm taking the total amount of the expenses and dividing it dividing it by 4 and having 3 months of expenses. That's what's still expected. So that leaves us with 1,002,000. Then we go to the ponds of what has been allocated prior years that was budgeted but not spent. And the number that I came up with, which differs from Bob's a little bit, is the 602,204. And you should have a separate ponds worksheet that explains that from 2010 through 2015.
Yeah, that's the same number that Bob came up with.
Oh, it is? Okay, I thought
Six-
maybe Bob's was a little bit higher.
No,
But
it's-
I wasn't sure.
No,
Okay.
it's 602.
Pretty close.
It's
Pretty
six,
close.
it's
Okay,
six, it
so
says
then you
602,204.
1 million, you subtract the 602 from the 1,002,000, and you are left with 632 that is not designated, okay?
Mhm.
Then what I did is I subtracted out the approved projects that we approved on June 18th that we did not budget for, and they were the MP rotators, the 15,485. We haven't paid for those yet, but the work has been completed. Indian Hawthorns, we have paid $4,700. The estimated cost was $10,000, so the $52.95 is the balance yet due. And I'm not sure if that I think the Indian Hawthorn Phase 1 project has been completed, but we can double check that with Sarah. And then the uplighting, even though it was done in the wrong location, that $4,000, that has been completed, but not paid for yet. Those total approved projects came to $24,780 that we still owe, and then I have other projects right below that, in contact with Ron, that could potentially be spent that we have not put in the fiscal 15 or 16 budget.
Right.
And one of those things was the realignment of Trieste at an approximate cost of $6,000, 4 traffic signs at a cost of $1,000 each, or $4,000. I found my old quote from West Coast Lighting for the various different kinds of uplighting at Treeline and Pelican, and I just plugged that number in just so that we could have something to look at, and that's $12,875. And then the 2 remaining phases of the Indian Hawthorn replacement that we were going to do over the next 2 years, if we did those all at once, at 10,000 a year, that would be 20,000. Those projects would be 42,875. So that would leave us a remaining fund balance of 565, still not spoken for. If we continue to keep 3 months cushion for CDD and HOA expenses, you can see the remaining balance after allowing for the 3 months cushion is $109,314.99. Well, $109,315 still left. Speaking in reference to the cushion, with my conversation that I had with Stephen Bloom yesterday, he felt as though that the cushion really did not need to be 3 months. He said that usually a 3 month cushion is kept because we don't start collecting the assessments until probably about December.
Right.
And we obviously have expenses for the months of October and November. And he said in smaller HOAs, they recommend the 3 month cushion to cover their cash outlay for those 2 months before the assessments start rolling in. In our case, because there's so much available cash, that he said that he doesn't really know that 3 months is really needed anymore. We might only want to keep 1 month. We might not want to keep any. He didn't feel as though it was important for us to have a 3 month cushion.
Chris, the
Now, he
reason,
wasn't saying not to have any cushion, but not a 3 month cushion.
Chris, the reason that we started out with the 3 month cushion was because of the overlap between the HOA collecting
Yes.
for everything and the CDD collecting for everything. And
Right.
we had that time period, and the decision really needs to be, part of the decision needs to be, will we ever go back to this being an HOA function collecting for these things as opposed to the CDD?
Right, and I did tell him that we had this conversation about the 3 months cushion, and he just said that was his explanation for why other HOAs have a 3 months cushion. It's basically to cover the couple of months before their assessments start rolling in.
Right,
So
but that's different.
that's a decision, I think that's a conversation that we need to have as a committee going forward.
But that's different. What Steve's talking about is different than our situation.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Chris,
Okay,
kick
so that
off.
was just
You
the
said we
reasoning.
should have
So, to get back to, I think it was Ron's
Question,
question
yes.
of how much do we have bottom line if we allocate for the 3 months cushion, we basically have about $109,000 left. If we do not, we have $565 left.
But let me carry Ron's question forward a little bit. If, let's say, you have allocated for the expenses for the last 3 months,
Yes.
approximately $400,000.
Yes.
Yes.
And now through August, we're still 326,000 to the good. So it looks to me like we probably won't spend quite as much as you thought in those last 3 months. Is that?
Oh, that's true, but I wanted to be really conservative
Yes.
when we make this, and when I just took the 3 months, I basically took our what we budgeted for those 3 months and what the CDD has budgeted for those 3 months, divided by 12 and
Right.
multiplied by 3.
Yep.
Just to get a round figure. I don't want to cut us too short that we're like, oh, we have,
Yep.
I would rather err on the side of caution than
Yeah.
not.
And
Chris, sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead. Nancy.
We give the HOA a slush fund to work with, or we did. Are we still doing that so that they can pay bills timely?
Not that I'm aware of.
Part of the agreement called for advancing them
Yeah.
some amount of money. And I thought we were still doing that.
Well, when Severn Trent took over, this is when Tracy was there. We actually had a meeting with Stephen, I think Sonia from his office, and Tracy and myself. We met at Pelican Preserve one afternoon to kind of go through the process. And the way it seems to work to me is that the bills come in, Sarah now would send a list of invoices. I approve them. I send them to Scott. Scott, well, I have to approve them before Scott approves them, and then I think that's when the funds are released. I have never been aware in the past 2 years that I've been doing this that we've given them any certain monies up front.
But the O&M agreement does call for us giving the money up front, because I just read that O&M agreement because it's being revised.
And I think that we have given them money up front, so there is money sitting somewhere that's a working fund.
But we haven't done it
So
since
who's,
Chris has been here. the
who's,
money's
who's,
probably gone.
yeah, but whose account, in other words, it was given at some point, and what
Correct.
you're saying is
It
they
was a-
still have it.
It should have been a slush fund to work from, so that the timeliness of getting bills paid
Yes.
was problematic for us and for the Master Association, and so that's why this account was set up to.
Sarah or Mary Beth, were you aware of anything of this sort?
Wow, I'm glad I came to this meeting. Yeah, we did a request.
Could you,
If you don't mind.
if you don't mind, thank you.
We have a guest.
We have a
We
guest.
have a guest.
We have a guest who knows where all the bodies are buried.
Yeah, when I first came on, there was $40,000 in the account that was done previous, and then
Can
again.
she come, excuse me, can she come up so I
Oh,
can't
oh,
hear
yeah.
who's speaking?
Oh, yeah.
That'll work, just stand there.
Just grab that one.
There-
Here, grab that.
Hi, Chris, how are you?
Hey, good to see you, I see you on screen.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Don't
Well,
take
you-
my word on this.
you can
I
see
don't
her back
represent
anyway.
anymore, but with knowledge of previous history, there was $40,000 that was in a fund that was a request, a separate request over and above invoices. And then additionally, there was another $20,000 because of the increase in the bills. And the reason why we did that was to place all of our utility bills on auto pay, because there was a lot of times that we were late on making those payments because of the net terms, so.
And that is in an account in
Castle.
It should
Castle,
be-
it's
it
a
sh-
Castle,
it
it's
should
in a
be-
Castle account.
It would be in the CDD operating account, so
Mhm.
basically how you reconcile that is
Yeah.
to look at the cash balance, the funding balance, and what you have outstanding, and there should be $60,000 in there. Unless it was appropriated in other way, I can't make a comment that it hasn't, but.
Okay, well, I can tell you that as of June 30th, I'm looking at Stephen's Gateway CDD, which I tie out to, and he had 91 in the checking account, 91,000,
Right.
and about 40,000 in accounts payable, so that was roughly 51,000.
So there, it's,
That's different.
it's not $9,000.
So of course, but I mean, it could have been that they could have moved between Meredith and Severn Trent, they could have maybe not carried as high of a balance in the checking account, and maybe moved some of that to the money market.
Good question.
Yeah, could make, good question.
Thank you. Mary Beth.
Thank you very much.
So that was like a one-time deal.
No,
Yeah.
no, it was
Sorry.
ongoing.
Well, why would we give them,
It was
once you give
40
them the
it
1
was-
month or so cushion, you don't have to keep giving more.
Because this was 10 years ago or 9 years ago when this was set up, and so we had inflation. Used to have inflation.
Well, yeah, used to, well, yeah. It's not
Um,
disappeared. But you
I
don't have
guess,
to give them 60,000
I guess,
more.
Chris, one of the things is that maybe we need to explore exactly, to be sure that we know where that money is and how much it is.
Okay, that's fine. Well, actually, with my conversation with Stephen, he
Yeah.
plans to be at our October, meeting
Yeah.
next month, which I guess is October 8th, I guess, I'm looking at calendar. Anyway, and he, actually wants to come and discuss with us. I told him that we were very concerned about the, interest rates, that we were receiving on our funds. And he said that the plan, with the board, with this CDD board, is he wants to come to us and find out what our projects are, when we feel as though we could use what funds we would be using, and therefore he could determine what funds we could potentially tie up, meaning putting them in short or long-term CDs. And then he will present those findings to the board, and then the board will make the determination as to what, based on his recommendations with information from us, of what CDDs that they would use
Yeah.
with a higher interest rate.
Chris, let me ask you a question, though. As we look at the current balance, starting with the 2,048,000,
Yeah.
starting in December, I guess, we're gonna get another $2 million, is that right? Approximately,
For our 26.
for 2000 and,
see here.
for 2016, I mean, I think the number is 2,071,071 or something, as I recall it.
Yeah.
But that's what our funding is for 2016, and most of those bills are paid in November and December.
Sure.
So we've got another big pile of money coming in, which, you know, won't be spent immediately, will be spent over the succeeding 12 months. So we're talking about, you know, we're talking about a very, very significant amount of money here. And,
Right.
you know.
And really, once you realize that there has been, you know, for ponds, for last year, well, through this year would be $602,000.
Yes.
And that's just relating to the pond. So that's why, and actually I talked with Stephen as well, as to say that we would like to have that, those ponds monies separated out, just as though he separates out our fixed asset reserves monies that have reserves account specifically marked for waterways, and that we could see those amounts completely separate.
Right, and that.
Like we've tried to do here.
Right, and that 602 will go up by another 442 as of the beginning of the next fiscal year, is that correct?
Well, that's what's budgeted, is 442.
Yeah, and
Yes.
and so
Now, it depends on how much they spend as to whether or not it goes into the reserves for that or not, because they're not gonna move it into the reserves until the end of the year.
oh, okay, so this is, you're talking about really a reserve for past expenditures, rather than a current.
For ponds, rather than it
ponds,
just
yeah.
being in one lump sum, because if you look at their reports
Yeah.
now, you'll see 597, which is our fixed asset reserves, which is our initial reserve deposit back in 2012 of 105,213, I think it was, and then we did 245,955 the past 2 years.
Correct.
So you total those 3 years together, and that's what's specifically designated in a fixed asset reserves account. What I said to him is I would like, and I think Bob agreed, is that he felt as though we would want to see a waterways reserves account there, which represents monies that had been budgeted in prior years,
Right.
but yet not yet spent for ponds. But it was designated towards ponds, and maybe for one reason or another, projects didn't get completed or whatever.
Right. Now, going to the other capital reserve, not the ponds, that's actually gonna be increased, is that right, by another $246,000? The 597 is going to be
Yes,
increased?
that's going to go up by 245, and that's why I allocated, that's why I subtracted that up near the top of the sheet.
Yes, right. So actually, that fund will not have, it will have more like 800 and, $845,000 or 842,000.
It'll have $843,078, and we usually ask to move that money after the audited statements are completed for September 30th, which will be a couple months down the road.
Right.
It usually takes a couple months to get the audited statements done.
Right.
And then once the audited statements are, that's when we usually go to the board and say we want to move X number of dollars into the reserve.
Mm-hmm. You know, obviously, there's a lot of guessing in this, as I think I told you. I met with Jack. His name is escaping me for the moment. About the capital, about our capital reserves.
Jack Richards.
Jack Richards, and he, his analysis, his preliminary analysis would indicate that we're considerably underfunded.
Correct.
I'm not sure that I understand all the numbers, but, so we may want to, as this year proceeds, we may want to consider maybe, even increasing the amount that we put into the capital reserve, as well as the bond reserve.
Right, and actually, when we had our budget discussions early on, I think when he initially did this report for us a couple of years ago, I think he started off as us having a balance of like 500,000 or close to that.
Yeah.
Well, of course, obviously, we didn't have the 500,000, and we started off with the 105, and then we increased that to 245 over the past couple of years.
Yep.
And I think at that time, there was some discussion or concerned that, I guess his numbers of how he allocates, certain, replacement costs.
Right.
Because I know that I had a report from him that I shared back probably early spring, maybe March or April.
Yep.
I can't remember all the specifics, but I think that that was some of, our committee's concerns back then, that his replacement costs were really escalated, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the big problems in that report was the assumptions he made on interest rates. which
Well,
were-
it's more.
Oh,
than
that was,
that.
yes, and that was
Wildly
another
high.
huge one. Yeah, I can't even remember, but they were astronomical, percentages.
This new report, makes lower assumptions with regard to interest rates. And he's looking at interest rates over a long term. The other problem, but apparently with interest, and it's something that we need to check out, but at least if you get interest income in an HOA, it's taxable.
Mhm.
I don't know whether that's true, of course, because we're a governmental entity, it may be that it is not taxable for us. But, his latest analysis, he used 5% as the interest rate and then 3.5% after it was taxed. So, you know, the 3.5 is probably closer. The other thing is, he assumed that we had a balance, fund balance at the end of, this fiscal year of 820,000, which is about a little less than we're actually gonna have. But he,
Well, actually, when you take the 597
Yes.
that we already have, and
yes,
then we
that-
add on the 245, we'll
That's-
be at 843.
Yeah, that's what I
So
said.
we'll be
I
slightly
said-
above his.
yeah, that's what I said, the 820 is a little less than what we're actually gonna have. But he claims that 820 leaves us only 39% funded.
Well,
Mhm.
now.
So, according to his analysis.
Well,
Yeah.
I think, before we jump off
Oh,
bridges on this, we really need to talk about it, because he's a condo association, person, and that's his business.
yeah.
I don't remember all that we talked about when we decided to recommend reserves. But a couple of things that occurred to me was there were some things in there that we made decisions to take out, but I think we left some things in there that we have also been treating as, annual operating expenses and not going to the reserves for. And if we're going to continue to treat them as annual operating, then they don't need to be in there as something we would go to the reserves for. The big ticket item in there was when he did the assessment for the roads, what he thought was appropriate for the roads and the streets.
Right.
He used a road like Colonial Boulevard as the amount of traffic that was gonna go over it.
Mhm.
And we have a lot of traffic, but we don't have the big, even with moving vans and work trucks, we don't have the kind of traffic that hits, like Colonial Boulevard. So I think he was way, way high on what,
Well, I think, that report was the first cut at doing this.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
And I think there were a lot of flaws with it,
There were a lot
but,
of flaws.
Mhm.
we need to.
It's something we need to get into at some point. I would suggest that today is not
No, it's not
the
today.
day.
no,
No,
but
no.
there's.
But,
I have to agree with Nancy. I mean, we discussed this
Oh,
way
yeah.
back then when that report came on, and she's absolutely correct.
yeah,
He had some items in there that just were not, I think, budgeted correctly for an association like ours, or an entity of ours.
I didn't bring this up to suggest that we ought to start extra funding for those reserves, but just to say that's what his analysis indicates. And his analysis takes into account now some of Cypress Grove, but only the parts that have been finished, so it's something we need to get into. In any event.
We should probably do that then before we commit to making some more deposits to that account next year.
Oh, yeah, we should. And it could be, he'd like to do another analysis for us, my inclination is to say, we ought to put in what we think is appropriate.
You're right.
And what we can afford, so, I'm not,
So where are we?
well, I think we're,
Now that we've had this-
I think where we are, well, of course, when Stephen comes in, we need to suggest to him, the amount of funds that we have available, and it seems to me that at least immediately, we could very easily put $500,000 into something somewhat long-term. I'm looking at the 565,000 before the you know, the cushion.
You're talking about how
Right,
to invest
right,
that?
before the cushion.
How to-
That's
Before-
correct.
be-
And that's taken into account those, projects, the realignment of Trieste, which I know Ron's going to speak about a little bit,
which is-
traffic signs, the
Yep.
uplighting.
Yep.
If we decide to do that, because I understand, from Sarah that there's works of, traffic lights, so we might not need the additional lighting there after all. And then the 2 additional phases of Indian Hawthorne that were not budgeted, this year or next year.
Yeah. You know, and it looks to me like, I don't know that we need, you know, I think we've got enough money for our cushion, if you will.
Well, then also, as part of the ponds as well, that 602.
Exactly.
Bob knows that he's not going to spend a certain portion of that until maybe 6 months or 9 months down the road. He might want to choose to, you know, put some of that in a CD as well.
Exactly.
You know, that's
Well,
another reason to
we
separate
have-
out all these
just one
accounts.
last second.
Hmm?
If I'll just fight here just for this. We have committed by contract 417,000 for aeration, which should be used within 6 months from August.
Mm-hmm.
We've also got 130,000 committed for bank erosion,
Okay.
and then we've got it somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000 for washouts. So that money, although it has been accumulated and looks pretty significant, is going to evaporate pretty quickly. I would say certainly by second quarter of next year.
Yeah, but by second quarter of next year, you're gonna have another $442,000.
Oh, by the way.
Well, okay, but there's a lot of that that's not, that's committed for other things. I
Yeah.
agree with you.
Yeah.
We're not poor.
No.
We're not.
No.
Well, one of the things that you need to keep in mind is if you, if we decide to instruct, Stephen to put money in CDs, is we need to be careful about when we think we're gonna need
Need
it,
it.
because there will
Well-
be penalties.
Yeah, and you
Yes.
can-
This whole thing's gonna take a little bit of planning, if you
Yes.
do it the right way.
Right.
Okay, and we're not gonna do it here today.
Right.
Okay, and I think
So I
everybody's
think
aware
he
of
just
that.
wants a general idea of what we think, what projects we think are coming up. And then, of course, he's going to take into account, he already knows what our budgeted expenses are, and he's going to kind of back into an amount that he thinks is appropriate. And then he goes to research his CDs, and then he's going to take that to the board. That's how he explained it to me.
Yeah. Well, but you know, we're the ones who have to tell him what we
Right.
think,
You're right.
the funds we
We're
think,
gonna-
what
we're
the
gonna
funds we
spend
think
what?
we're gonna need.
Right,
And,
that's the key part of it.
and, you know, as I look at some of these things, they don't involve expenditures. You know, we're talking about a substantial sum of money that is not gonna be spent certainly immediately. And
By definition.
By definition, it's not gonna be spent.
Right, right.
And,
The only thing I would caution you
Yeah.
on is what happened, and Herb may remember, or Bob may remember, Severn Trent may not do this to us, but, one of the things that happened 2 years in a row with the prior management company was they screwed up the timing on our budget, and so they had to take, any increase. They had to, the CDD went with what we had said we wanted for the prior year, and any increase that we had thought we were going to get for projects that we wanted to do came out of the cash we had available to go to it, because they were so busy doing the greater district budget that they neglected to consider what we wanted as increases, even though we were in way ahead of time.
So what do you, okay, having said that, what are you proposing?
Well,
What do we do?
I'm just putting something
It
out there.
sounds like we've
Well,
got the
this-
budget
this
a little
pro-
bit more
this
under
problem
control
isn't just
right
our
now.
problem, it's the greater district's
well,
problem.
except the district claims, or they did at their last meeting, that they have already taken steps to invest their monies, and they are getting higher interest rates. They have already done that, and in fact, Chris, you mentioned that, there's $13 million or something, is that
Yeah,
right?
that's what it was, yeah, 13 million.
And apparently, from what I heard at that meeting, you know, what they told me was, oh, well, we've already got this covered.
Well, the other sad thing is, I don't know what our monthly balances were in
Yeah.
all these accounts for last year and the year before that and the year before that. But my impression is, this is the first time they're thinking this way.
Yes, right. Yeah.
which I find unconscionable.
Yeah,
Okay, really.
I agree.
So back to my
Yeah,
question,
Chris,
now, what do we do?
Yeah, Chris,
Now.
let me ask,
Yeah.
let me ask you another question now. This $187,000,
That was always, one of Ned's notes, for the bond refi,
I
and this is
understand.
where we need Bob's help. I don't know if that was earmarked for waterways, or, was used, or whatever, but that money has been kind of like just in limbo, just that number has been sitting there.
Bob,
It has, yes, it was earmarked by a vote.
But it hasn't been
specifically for that.
spent.
Has not been, well, it's been committed, but not spent, yes.
Okay, so in addition to Bob's 602, there's that 187, and that's why I didn't want to put those two amounts together, because I didn't fully understand about the 187. It was just always separated out.
Bob, in your analysis, the one that shows the your payments, that 187 is the same as the 181?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't know how much it was, we were.
Okay, so I mean, what we're really saying is that you have $782 or $85,000 available.
789, yes.
789. Well, yeah, yeah, 789 available.
Yeah, we didn't use that earlier, because until we got Bloom to buy off on it,
Yes,
all of this was, guessing.
yes.
Bob, on that 187, because it's tied to the bond refi, when we spent that money originally, the bond trustee said that the monies that we were spending had to be spent in phase one. Is that the understanding that, that the settlement funds will also have to be only spent in phase one of Pelican as opposed to phase two?
Phase 2 being
Well,
Cypress
phase
Grove?
one, you're absolutely correct, that was the source of the funds. And fortunately, or unfortunately, everything that we're going to spend on aeration in this 417,000 is in phase one, every penny.
So there's not a problem, we won't have anybody complaining?
Well, they wouldn't have, I don't think they'd have any kind of standing.
No, I don't.
Yes.
Okay, so you're gonna, of the 419, you're gonna use this 187 in that expenditure?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so that number should go away then, is what we're saying?
That'll go away
Yep,
by February, I would think. As a matter of fact, I asked Scott today if we've gotten any kind of preliminary billing
yeah,
from our contractor, and we haven't.
okay. So, Bob, what I guess we need to know is, taking into account the 602,000 that's, left over from the past, and the 187,000 from the refee, and the 442 you're gonna get in this next year, how much of that is gonna be expended within the year 2016?
Well, if we do not discuss the 442 coming,
Yes,
and I would prefer not to, because a lot of that's gonna be committed funds that are not discretionary.
okay,
But of the money we currently have,
yep,
and the problems we currently have, we, ballpark, we're about 200,000 shy of known things we think we wanna work on.
okay,
Now, we have not set aside any money at all for changes we know we're going to have to make in the new areas. And a lot of this talks about downspout runoff into a prevent washout. And it doesn't really factor in phase one homes that don't have the proper rain spout runoff to the ponds that we know we need to do and want to commit funds for. With the things we can defer, well, the aeration will be behind us pretty much, and we do have money allocated in the new 442 to do some of that in the new Cypress Grove areas. But what we don't have are the washouts in phase one and all of the bank erosion issues in phase one, and then the rain spouts. So we do have some looming items, but we don't have any major big ticket items down. We got most of those behind us now.
Is,
And we kept our budgets steady for the last 3 years now on the premise that these are multi-year projects.
yeah. But is the 442 for next year fully committed?
We have line item commitments, yes. But like we've got 100,000 in there for aeration, which should be, more than we're gonna need for, Cypress Grove. But we don't have enough money in there for bank erosion, which we've only got 50,000 in. And that's turning out to be a major cost item for us. Armor Max is what I'm talking about when we get to that. The price on that we're going with the district, and we agree with it, has gone from $70 a square foot to probably closer to $100 a square foot.
So, am I hearing you say that even if we take the 602 that's left, the 187 from the refee, that you're gonna need, and the 442 that you got for next year, you're gonna need even more money than that?
Not next
Well, that's the truth, but here's how I would prefer to phrase it, Phil.
Yeah,
Of the money we currently have our hands on, the 660 and the 180,
yeah,
pretty much all of that has been committed.
okay,
Now, while we can say we need more funds, we can also space out the timing to multi-year, and that's what we had previously said we were going to do. So in other words, we may have $1 million worth of projects out there, but that doesn't mean we need to do them all in 2 years.
okay.
Okay.
Because
And until the whole committee would talk about that, to see what makes sense or what's prudent, but we're really trying to hold the line on the bond budget being what it is and not increasing for improvements. The only increase that should come from here on out is due to taking over new bonds.
Yeah,
And that's gonna be a significant sum of money. I mean, we're about halfway there on bonds.
yeah,
We're spending I think we got 130 right now is what we'll be spending with aquagenics. And in future years, that'll probably go to 260.
see, I think that your work group needs to sit down and try and figure out what the timing will be of funds that you need to, the expenditure of your funds.
Right.
Because that's gonna,
And we quite honestly do that all the time.
okay.
We actually do that all the time.
Can you come up with a schedule that says we're gonna spend so much
At
at
this point.
certain times? Because in order to have this discussion with Stephen and be able to put some funds away, if we think we can put some funds away, we're gonna need to know that.
Yeah, it's gotta go out for a couple of years too.
Yeah. Can you?
Well, I'm chuckling because you don't know how many times we've tried to do this. And everything gets in the way. I mean, when you go out for aeration, which should have been done a year ago,
Yeah.
here we're still just now starting. It's very difficult to do that because of all the unforeseens. But we will certainly give it the yeoman's try again.
I think so.
We don't have a lot of unknowns anymore. I mean, we are getting better at it.
Yeah.
We're certainly more robust today than we were, 2-3 years ago.
And even if you had something like, that you say you think you're gonna have to spend next year, but it extends out another year, well, that's too bad. We would lose some interest on that money. We wouldn't be able to put it
Correct.
away. But at least we
Correct.
would know.
We would know, right?
We would know
I hear you.
what what.
I hear you, and that's true. I totally agree with it, and I think we can, now that interest rates are getting to the point where there's something to talk about,
Yep.
I agree with that.
Yep. And it seems to me, that the cushion could be significantly reduced. I mean, I just think we need to have some idea of what our projection looks like here. So that.
Well, I agree with you, but you gotta understand, Phil, when we started, we thought we were gonna spend the money in the year in which we appropriated.
Yeah, no, I think you have to do,
Yeah.
I'm now on to something else. I'm assuming you're gonna do your part.
You got it, okay.
Okay, now I'm looking at the other funds we've got available or potentially available. And one of them is $400 and some odd $1,000 worth of, $450,000 worth of cushion. That I don't think you know, my sense of it is, most of it we probably don't need. I don't know.
That was Stephen's comment as well.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so it seems to me that in looking at this with Stephen, we can say, and we do, Chris, I think we're gonna need to do a little bit of projection based on what Bob's projection is, and then add in our thoughts on this to give Stephen an idea of what we might be able to put away.
Well, the fundamental decision is, are we saying that, are we gonna delay out to however long-term these are invested? That we don't think that these funds will revert back, or that we'll switch the working agreement, back to
Well,
the management company.
yeah, well,
Because if that happens,
yeah.
this is the money that would fund.
Well, it seems to me we don't have to go, we can say, we're not gonna switch it back in the next year or 2 years. I mean, we could make that kind of a
Or just reduce it gradually.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have to stay at that number. This year.
Interestingly enough, I don't know whether anybody picked this up, but this background dash investment of surplus funds, Chris, did you get this? From,
No, I did not.
I guess from Stephen, but,
That's me.
oh, that's yours, sir. And interestingly enough, on this one, it's saying that, CD rates for 6 month, 1 year, and 2 year are all the same. 1.25% for 6 month, 1 year, and 2 year CDs.
Respectively. Let me see how it works.
Yeah.
4.5.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
6 months is .2.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay,
1 year is .8,
All right.
2 years is 1.2.
okay. Yeah, but I think, we're gonna have to make a judgment as to how long we can leave this stuff packed away.
And even for normal forget about the big expenses that
Yeah.
we have budgeted for, but even like for normal operating expenses, you can do better than just putting things in the money market is the easy way out of this problem. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
right now, of the monies that are there, approximately 91,000 is sitting in a checking account. They're calling that the operating checking account at 0.03%.
Yeah,
And then the rest of the funds, the other 2 million plus, is in a money market, and that is at, 0.19%.
0.19.
I think I said that through Scott, I
Yes,
believe.
yes,
Yeah.
that's correct.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, for our reserve account, okay,
Yep.
it's, I think, pretty easy to maybe program it out
Yep.
with,
Oh, yeah.
how we invest things.
Oh, absolutely, and I
But-
think that's what he wants to come and discuss with
but-
us,
but I
and
thi-
get our feelings of when these projects and what amount of monies we think that we can, put aside into a CD.
Yeah, but it seems to me the problem is even bigger than that, because what you wanna do also, I think, is invest money, operating monies in shorter term instruments, which are not getting, not money market, but, maybe 6 month CDs that you continually roll over
Yeah.
as the year goes on. So every month you're rolling over another CD.
Yeah.
And you're getting income for that month,
Yeah.
okay.
I think you're absolutely right, Herb, because there is the factor that we're sitting here with $2 million, and we're gonna get
Yeah,
another
right.
we're
Yeah,
gonna
I
get another
know.
$2 million
It's-
in
it's-
December.
I know.
So
And
we
we're
ought to,
making
we ought to be able to do that,
0.03%,
huh?
Making 0.03%
Yeah,
at best.
yeah, or 0.19.
That's who was it, Everett Dirksen said,
0.19.
a billion here and a billion there, and pretty soon you have real money.
Money, yeah.
Okay. Well, Bob, we need your analysis, and then, we need to have this discussion with Stephen, I think.
You got it. We'll work on it. I'll get my group,
Let me
teleconference together, see what we come up with.
let me just throw one more item out there.
Yep.
From what I'm hearing, we've got between $103,000 to $400,000 unallocated,
Yes.
okay? Not to reserves or ponds or any other project.
Right.
Why don't we give that back to our
You
taxpayers?
could do that too.
Well,
I mean, you know.
because, and I think what Bob is about to say, I will say it for him, that probably we will eventually need that money
Okay.
for the ponds.
When-
So are we
Absolutely.
So-
better off giving it back and then taking it away from them again, or are we better off hanging on to it and spending it?
Well, and then there's
And that's the question.
Yeah,
then-
That's what it really comes down.
yeah,
in addition to
What is
ponds,
the better dynamic?
yeah,
in addition to ponds, also looming out there is, the possibility of defeasing the bonds so that the road turnover, could happen.
Yes.
As far as getting us in control of our roads. And in order to defease it,
We may have to come up with some
we
money.
may have to
You
come
come
up with
up
some
with-
money.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I'm saying, let's not be
I don't think
too
there's any
quick.
doubt
Yeah,
about
I
that.
think we
So
already-
is that still being,
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, and.
Who's
and
in charge of
it
that
appears,
discussion?
well, we're working on it.
You're part of that
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it appears preliminarily that just for the roads, the portion of the bond that we would have to put up would be about $600,000 or $700,000. So
So-
we may need
Need
those
the money,
funds.
yeah.
We may need those
Okay,
funds.
I've got to
This
sign
would be
off,
the-
guys.
Okay.
This would allow us to take the road
You
private.
mean
Yeah,
we,
exactly.
okay,
Put ourselves out of business.
huh?
Put ourselves out of business. You will become.
I'll
part
read
of
the minutes
next
from here on out.
association.
Okay, all right, well, we know you only allot us 2 hours, so.
Well, I allowed you an hour and a half that we went to. And I
I see.
really thought that would be going first in ponds, it'd be a quick meeting, but I was wrong.
Yeah, okay, well, thank you for your inputs.
Thank you, guys. See you later.
Okay, we'll see you.
Bye.
Okay, any other questions for me?
I don't think so, Chris. Okay,
Okay.
the one other thing I would suggest is Bob's gonna work on his piece of it. I think that all of us ought to give some thought to this and communicate our thoughts to Chris, through Diane, obviously, about what we think.
What's his name's gonna be here next
And,
month?
yes,
What-
and so that we're a little bit more prepared for Stephen,
Mhm.
okay? So.
Okay.
We will do that. All right, so we've taken care of items 4, 5, and 6. Mr. DePonte, you're on.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let me ask, Dan, if you would.
Yeah, Dan,
Yeah, come up for a
We just-
second. You should have gotten 2 things in your packet. One was a quote to buy a traffic monitoring sign
Yeah.
for $4,900. It's in there someplace.
Yep.
Okay.
So that,
And the second thing would be a bunch of pictures of speeders.
Yep.
Okay, which I think is very interesting. The first thing I'd like to do is talk about those pictures. One of the things that the working group has been talking about with Securitas and Sarah is buying the capability of taking those kinds of pictures. That sign is set up in such a way that if you're going over a particular speed number, and you can set that, it takes a picture of it. Now, it's not quality to the point where you can read a license plate
Yeah,
or any
right,
of those
right.
types of things, okay? But when it comes to a lot of the commercial equipment, you
you
might
can
be
tell,
able to
you can tell who the
identify who
company
that
was.
is.
Right. Mhm.
Even with the resident, I think it's an interesting thing that you might be able to, and that's one of our suggestions, post that someplace, and we'll talk about how that would happen, and put a little thing in, do you know who this driver is? And if you do, tell them to slow down. And do that on a regular basis with new information. The idea is to get across to the community that you're being watched, and if you're going fast, not 31 or 35, but these are all people doing 40 or higher. Okay, so you're significantly over the speed limit. And keep that in front of the community. And it might be interesting to see how many people look at that white car over there in one of those pictures and say, oh, I know who that is. And maybe talk to that person about slowing down, okay? And a lot of people inadvertently go over the speed limit.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we're not talking about giving them fines or tickets or any of those types of things, because we can't identify them. But the idea is to keep that kind of information in front of our community, okay? As
My
we collect the
suggestion,
information.
yeah, in principle, that's a good idea, but my suggestion would be to put it in front of the community before you do it. Tell people this is what our plan is and see what kind of feedback
Oh,
you
yeah,
get.
I don't have any problem with that, certainly.
Well, and the only caution I would give you on having people become traffic cops and go and, personal traffic cops and go and talk to people about their speeding, is you don't know the reaction of the person that's speeding and,
Well, we don't know who that person is. There's no way
well,
you can
no,
tell who
no.
the person is.
Even
that's
if you,
speeding.
even if you know, even if I know who it is
Right.
and I were to go to that person, you're potentially putting yourself at risk, and
Well, you
that's
don't
not
have
a
to do
good
it.
thing to do it.
You don't have to do it, that's a
But,
personal
but we
decision.
have some people that will take vigilante.
You know. But I think putting that information out there, I think it's a good idea. I have no problem in presenting it to different forums, I have no
I think
problem
the
with
idea
that.
of going after
because
commercial
that also
vehicles-
gets it in front of the community again. That, you know, this is going on, and what do you think about? You know,
Only
there's a
thing-
lot of people are very concerned about speeders,
The
and I
only,
understand
the only
that.
part of this I object to is encouraging people to go confront.
And in fact,
Ron, I'd like
Okay.
to make a comment. This All Traffic Solutions sign, that's really an informational sign. We have it here in Ocean City going across a 2.2 mile bridge cross causeway. It forces, when people see their speed and it's blinking and it says slow down, it can tell you all sorts of things. It works.
Okay,
It really does work. I had brought this up a couple of years ago. We were talking about speeding, but taking photographs and everything else, that's another auxiliary that these systems can do. But just the sign itself, telling that driver to slow down, and it's blinking, slow down.
well, what you get, if you see the sign in action, what you get, if you're going over that 40, it really starts like a strobing
strobe
effect.
flash, yeah.
So you really
Well, I mean, it will tell you
does
can
get your
set it to
attention,
whatever
and you really
want.
are going
I mean,
too
if our
fast.
speed limit is 30, and it will show you're going 33, 34,
Yeah,
35.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if he's going 30, this sign can tell you, have a nice day. Thank you.
Wow, it's like,
It works.
I don't think we should
It
spend
really
another
works.
$5,000 to get a big sign that says things like that. But that's the general idea, is to bring it to people's attention and keep it in front of them. Okay, now
I
whether we
don't think
post.
we have to take the photo, well, this is
Well-
my opinion right now. Do you have to take the photographs and start doing that? Nancy has some good comments there. The sign, the speed limit informational sign, I think will help slow down traffic.
Okay.
Now, if we're concerned about a lot of commercial vehicles, and those are the people we want to target, maybe the photographs are worthwhile.
Well,
But to go after, as Nancy said, the residents at this time, then it becomes like, are we a police state?
sure, one of those.
I mean, I'm not in your committee. I think there's a lot of comments that everybody is, bringing forth. But I do like the idea of these signs. I think they're fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with your position, John.
One of those commercial vehicles, I've already approached the driver
What did he
and
say?
informed him that, oh, by the way, you were caught doing 41. He said, oh, I only do 35. I said, I'll show you the picture if you'd like. Oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
We'll see if he slows
Mhm.
down. Because
So-
that's the other thing, is if you get multiple pictures of the same
Right.
people,
Yes.
Is there,
then you can go to their bosses.
is there
and
any
then,
way,
you know, that type of
is
thing.
there any way to tie that back to the cameras that are at the gate? That actually record, you get the license plate?
yeah, I don't
Well, if you've got, well, if you've got, if you've got a serious offender,
Well, maybe as an exception.
I mean, that's,
The problem is, if you got multiple vehicles coming through the gate at a similar time, it'd be almost impossible to separate them.
well,
I
that,
don't know.
Well,
Right.
Yeah,
it really
that-
depends on placement too.
Sure.
Where the sign is placed right now, it's
Yeah, but-
fairly close to the gate, but depending on where you're putting in the community, you have no idea where that car or driver came from.
That's true.
Good example,
We'll
I
have to
mean,
leave it in that spot all the
yeah.
time. We're gonna
The
leave
sign
it-
really is more of a proactive tool. There's a proactive
Right.
tool and a reactive tool. This sign really is a proactive tool. A report that I ran just on a short period of time I had it here, we actually got 9,100 drivers that went past the sign. Of those, 54% were speeding,
Well,
So that's a huge
define that
number.
going over 30.
over
Right.
35.
35, or
So you had 54% of your drivers were going over 35. We had one clocked at 72.
See, that's the guy I wanna go after.
But on
I
an
can't.
average day,
Okay, that's the
you
guy
have
I wanna go
drivers that are driving over 40 and 50 miles per hour. So there's a big variance here, but if you look at the number of almost 54% of your drivers, where that sign is placed, which is at the very front of your community, they haven't even gotten into the community for the most part, and 54% of them are going over
The-
35 miles per hour.
The software, including the camera software, whatever, is that included in this price?
Yes.
So that's the full price? Okay, great.
And again, the camera on this thing, just so everybody's aware, I mean, this device, again, is more of a proactive tool, not a reactive tool. There are better products out there that actually get license plates and all that. Those are revenue generators. I call them revenue generators because I live in the community. I'm an HOA president in my community. We went that route because this route.
This is John. Who's talking now? Can they?
Dan
talk
Mussey,
into the speaker?
he's standing in front of the mic.
No, that mic.
Oh, doesn't work? I'm sorry.
I don't think so.
Can you grab-
Can we put that?
Well, this is the one that reaches.
Oh, that's the other one.
reaches.
There you go.
So what I was saying is, I'm an HOA president in my community. The sign that we bought was a secondary sign to this sign, and we do go after them. We look at license plates and we charge, the first one's a warning, the second one's $100 fine. And trust me when I say those signs are very, very intense. There's no arguing, you have a picture. These products that we're talking about here, this sign more is, again, a proactive tool. It's take the reports that come out of it, show it to the community, let them be aware that we don't have just a small speeding problem. If 54% of our drivers are actually speeding, that's a big number. And when they start seeing those numbers, and we're doing speeds of 40 and 50 and 70 miles an hour on our streets, that's a big problem. But it does work. I think the gentleman that was on the phone said in Ocean City they're using the signs. You will see just in the snapshot that I took that from day 1, 2, and 3, when we were having a bunch of people speeding, it starts to taper off. When they start seeing the sign, they start seeing what it does. They're not aware it's taking pictures. The pictures come in handy only really, as you just said. If you see a UPS driver, you can call UPS and say, hey, who is the driver in our community, the guy speeding? If he continues to speed, we don't want him in our community. Same thing with the U.S. Postal Service. Same thing with FedEx. I mean, we do it in our community. Same thing with a Jets driver. Like you see a Jets sign on the car and the guy's doing 50 miles an hour, you call the local Jets store, the guy will never be in the community again. So you're kind of thwarting off some of the speeding, but really, from an informational perspective, when the residents start seeing numbers like that, 55%, 54% of our people are speeding in our community. We live here. This is our community. That's a big eye opener. It's not 10%. That's a small number. But when you're talking those numbers, that's a large number of speeders. And again, that's at the very front of your community.
Well, another thing you do, we should publish that number every month in
Yeah,
the monthly
absolutely.
newsletter.
Absolutely.
And those reports you can graph them, pie
I need to talk
charts.
to you about generating, because I
Yeah.
didn't read the report the way you just described it to me. So
Okay,
that's
yeah,
why I
and-
didn't give it to everybody, because I couldn't understand it, so I didn't want to send it to folks.
Yeah, and I just don't want to give everybody a false sense of security knowing that the cameras really in this device are not really set up to be great. I mean, you'll see as I went through the photos, we took literally hundreds of photos. A good majority of them are blank because you can't judge the speed and the camera's not intelligent enough to say, I'm honing in on this vehicle coming at me. If he's doing 30 to 35 to 40, I probably got him. If he's doing over that, he's going past me before I can actually take a picture of him. So it's just, there's a lot of play there, but
So the worst offenders got past it.
yeah, the 72 mile an hour guy probably got past the camera, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Took the picture.
I think one of the bennies of this sign is that we can not only use it on our main roads, but we can, at times, appropriate times, we can offer it to the
Yeah,
communities.
and that's the plan.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's exactly the plan. I would go to the president's
Mhm.
meeting, for example, and offer it up to them. And say, hey, if you'd like to use it inside, you get the data. We don't want to see it unless you want to share it with us. But it's inside your HOA area. You take it and you share it with your particular residents and tell them, here's what's going on. So what I'd like to do is, I don't know if I need a vote or not, going back to the budget, where it shows $6,000 for the Trieste Pelican Reserve intersection, I'd like to scratch that, because that's a long-term project if it happens, and I'd like to substitute this for that, if it's okay with you guys.
Well, Ron, before you do that, we actually had budgeted in the fiscal year of 16's fiscal year 16 budget, $7,000 for the purchase of an electronic traffic sign.
I was getting to that, but I'd like to buy it now versus October.
Oh, that's fine. I just wanted everybody to know that it's
Yeah.
something that we had budgeted for
Right.
already.
Right.
What's the thinking on this? People like the idea of buying the sign.
I like what John's, John's had experience with it, and says
I
it
think
says
they're
it
great.
works.
Ron, I have one question on the quote. Does this have a solar panel power supply?
No,
No, they're battery operated, they're battery powered.
it's battery.
The ones that they're used here are solar powered, and they're not, they work fine.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
they do. There's options you can
There-
get on them. You're starting to escalate your costs, but
But the-
if you get 2 battery packs, that's what we've been doing in this community for years, and you know that the system will give you an alert when it's hitting 20% of its battery power. And again, if you guys buy this, my guys are all trained on it. They'll take care of it. We'll move it around. We'll swap your batteries.
How long-
John,
how long
the
do the
gu-
batteries
guard,
last?
the guard,
One battery will last several days. I mean, it's a very, very low power item. I mean, you'd
One
be
battery
surprised.
lasts how many days?
A few days.
few
Several
days,
days.
but there's a battery pack, John. and-
Yes, it's 2
and-
battery
And
packs.
the guards are trained to swap it out.
Right.
So our, you know, Dan here, we didn't fully introduce him, is from Securitas. And, their guards are trained to swap out the battery packs.
Mhm.
How much would a solar panel cost?
I've never purchased one. I'd have to go back and look at how they option that.
How much more expensive was the?
I thought it wasn't that much more expensive at all.
We can look into it. I mean,
We can look at that.
I had
Yeah.
some quotes, All Traffic Solutions 2 years ago. I don't even know if I can find my information from that. I think, Mary Beth had looked into that as well at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You might use.
Well, we'll look into that and
Just
see
don't
what
look
makes
at
sense.
and they're not obtrusive. They're very nice, solar packs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see, because the idea is we're gonna leave them in one place for at least a week or 2 at a time. So rather than having the guys going out there every 2 or 3 days to replace batteries, you have a solar thing, you just leave it, set it up, and they just check it periodically, make sure it's working.
yeah, I could find out.
Yeah.
It's a
Okay.
quick call. I can find out what
Let me
the
get,
actual.
before we make the decision, then, can I just get the sense of the committee, regardless of how we do it? Is this something that people feel we should do? Cory?
Yeah.
I say yes.
Yes.
We'll go along with it.
Nancy, were you, yeah, okay, Chris?
Yep, I'm fine.
Okay, all right, so let's just get some pricing on that, and we can,
Go execute.
the next
Do
meeting.
you wanna wait till the
Well,
next meeting?
Yeah.
Tell you what, there's $6,000 that's allocated for that Trias intersection.
Yeah,
Do we wanna authorize Ron's work group to spend up
up to.
Up to 6,000, if that's.
Otherwise, you come back.
Otherwise, we'll come back to this for
Okay,
more money.
okay,
That's a plan.
is that a
I'll
motion?
make that a motion.
Nancy's made a motion that, we authorize the,
Subject to getting a solar panel quote?
Well, that's the idea, as
Okay,
long as
right,
it doesn't, you know, it's not $10,000.
Yeah,
right,
like
right,
that,
right.
you know.
okay,
They were under $5,000, the whole thing.
okay.
I remember the package that I'm looking at in the quote versus the solar panel, I still think it's way under
We have, a-
$5,000.
do we have a second to Nancy's motion?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Thank you.
4-0. Okay, keep going,
Did,
Ron.
did you wanna talk about this management system or?
Oh, the OSGM. Yeah, I think some of the people might have seen that product, the flyer that I had sent. I'm not
Well,
sure if
all
everybody
we
did.
got was this,
We
this one
just, we
page.
just got one page.
Okay.
Just one page, that
So,
was it.
the on-site guard management is a product that we're using at quite a few of our communities. And what it really is useful and helpful for is a community of this size. We get a lot of questions of what are the guards doing, where are they at, what was the issues in our community? And there are some boards that are extremely active and want to know what's going on in their communities, and other boards just want to get a report from me once a month, you know what I mean? The on-site guard management is a tool that we provide to a lot of our clients. It is I call it a tether. I mean, you know what's going on with the guard in your community 24/7. It's all web-based.
How does it actually work?
It's actually just it's gonna look like a regular device, just like this. It's a smartphone with a specific application on it, which is the on-site guard management. So right now, let's just walk through our scenario. In your community, if there's an incident, the guard has to sit there and jot down some quick notes, and he's gonna go back to the, his little hut, and he's gonna actually fill out a piece of paper, and try to remember everything he did, and write it all on his chicken scratch, and then hopefully we can all read it at some point, and we disseminate that to either our client if it's important enough, or we keep it internally to track an incident. With this device, it's all electronic. You go in there, you say you're gonna create an incident report, it's all digital, you're typing on it, it'll actually create a digital report, and that digital report is available to anybody who has access to this software. So from a community like this, any board members, whoever wants to be actually have a logon for it, will be able to see all that information. You can also attach photos and video. So not only am I getting just an incident, now I have a picture of whatever it was, whether it was an accident or somebody hit a tree or there was damage somewhere. I have it all in a digital format. It's all PDF. Anybody can download it. Anybody can look at it. That's one of the unique features of it. It'll also do what's called the DAR, Daily Activity Log. So right now, that's all handwritten as well. So if you guys want to know what happened during the course of the day, we have to go dig up all the paperwork, and we'll show you guys the paperwork of what the guy wrote down for every hour or every half hour he was on site. This device does it for the guy. So basically, he will just type in here all of his activity. Again, he can attach a picture. Nothing's going on, or I talked to resident so-and-so or whatever. It's all done electronically. The other neat feature is that this is all a web-based product. So as he's using it on his phone, it's live to anybody who has access to the website. So I can tell exactly what he's doing. Another way we use it is we do two things. We do foot patrols, which are obviously we're walking around in communities if they have a community pool or areas we want us to patrol. And then we have people who drive around in vehicles and do vehicle patrols. What we do is very, very simple. We install what's called an NFC chip. This is a near frequency chip, very small, not obtrusive at all. And these are placed in inconspicuous areas. So if you have a clubhouse tour and a guy does a clubhouse tour or a pool tour, something along those lines, we install these little devices. These little devices are read by the phone. So if this is sitting on a wall somewhere, he starts a tour, he comes up the device and actually has to lay the phone on the device. There's a reader in the phone. It'll give you a digital time print of where that guy was at, exactly what he did. So if he's doing a tour and there's like multiple points for his tour, you'll see exactly when he did his tour, exactly what time he spent on his tour. So again, you're tracking where the officers are at. So if you're paying for patrol and you want to know, well, where'd the guy patrol? The guy's here for 24 hours and doing patrols, but where are they actually driving? What are they actually looking at? I want him to go here. I want him to drive by this gate. I want him to drive, these points. We could put these chips anywhere. They don't require any power. They're just a chip that actually adheres to any spot on there. And if the guy's there and he's doing his patrol and you want him to get out of the vehicle and scan that device, now you know the guy was actually in that place and your tour was complete. So again, I call it a tether because the guards hate when I say that. But it's keeping a live beat of where that person or where that guard's at the whole time he's on your property, and it's all electronic. Shift reports are all electronic. When that guard switches his log off onto the next officer, that's all done electronically. And the beauty from my perspective is it's kind of a two-way tool. It helps me keep track of what's going on in your community, but it gives you guys the insight 24/7. If you want to know what's going on in the community, you can look at any report anytime you want and know exactly where that officer was at. So it kind of replaces a lot of the handwritten reports with all digital fingerprint analysis. And these chips, again, if you're doing tours, I can set up any kind of tour. I can tell the officer where he needs to be at a certain time, and you can be assured that the officer is actually there.
So you would like for us to pay for that?
Yeah, it's a product that, again, it helps me, but I think it helps the community. I don't know how in tune you guys are with the community as to what goes on here in a given day or a shift, or if you ever look at the incident reports, if you ever look at the DARs. Some communities don't see no value in it whatsoever. Other communities who really want to know see a great value being able to log on from home or wherever they're at and just find out what's going on in the community. What's going on? Do we have any incidents? Do we have any incident reports that were filed? Do we have any, anything on the DAR I wanted to look at? Where was the guy on his patrol? So it's really a matter of how in tune you guys are with the community. I see it as a value win-win tool for the community as well as for me. We do this all now by paper. But again, a lot of communities are asking us to kind of step up the game and where are your officers at and what are they doing? And, this is our value add to show you what the officers are doing at all times.
Dan, so the bottom line is how much?
It's $240 a month, and that includes the cellular, all the reporting, the web access, again, any unlimited number of users, and kind of gives you guys the fingerprint on what's going on in the community. It includes any chips, any tours we set up, and that basically, it's a pass-through device for us. It just covers the cost of the cell and the storage and the data on the device and the chip costs.
Well, since it's of such benefit to you, is there a possibility of a shared cost of it?
They won't. I mean, it's our portion of it.
I see it really as it's a management tool for you.
It is. It's a two-way tool. I mean, we see the value in it because our guys, we have a way of tracking our guy.
Yeah.
Okay. From my perspective, it's a
your
tool.
guys know you're tracking them.
Well, they kind of know we do now because we know that our supervisors are always wandering around the communities, but this really came about from our client saying, hey, what's the value add of us having our patrol? What does the guy do on patrol? Well, I could say, well, the guy drives around your community. Okay, but well, where does he go? And a guy can write his notes if he wants to write his notes, and that appeases me, but this gives you guys a tool that says, okay, how do I know the guy was actually at the pool at midnight like he's supposed to be? Well, this is how the guy scans the device. And this is kind of an upgraded device. There were devices like this years ago. They called them Tocos, and they used to have a little stick that they used to actually hold on a chip, and it would just give you a printout at the end of the day. But it doesn't give you the electronics of being able to do pictures and photos and all the things that I think most communities now are kind of gearing to with liability and things like that.
Sense of the committee?
I'd like to hear what, how much use, we don't typically
No.
make use of the reports.
Reports.
I'd
Yeah,
like
right,
to know
yeah.
how much value the reports are to Castle, for instance. And, you know, I know you deal directly with most of the problems that come up, and the better part of the community never knows that it was XYZ resident that did something. I still have no clue who bashed my stop sign and my street sign at the end of Portofino, but you do.
Okay.
And Sarah has some of her coworkers in other locations where we have our clients that are using this product. And I've kind of shared that and said, you know, it might be a good idea to see what they say from an internal resource perspective. And I have no problem with coming by and loading the software up and letting you guys, just like I did the demo, I could actually show you from a live site what's going on at a live site. Again, if it's got value, it's a great tool. If it doesn't have value, you're right. If you're not really into the electronics and the technology and stuff like that, then it may not have its value. But it's something that I presented because I had been talking to Tracy and Sarah prior to and said, you were installing this in a lot of the communities, and one of them happened to be their community, the Fort Myers, the Riviera and Saint-Tropez towers, where we're doing it live there, and those guys have never seen anything like it, but they are very in tune because they have multiple boards and multiple presidents, and everybody wants to know what's going on in their building, and so for them, it's like, okay, well, here's your tool. You can just log on anywhere you want and see exactly what's going on. So it's just got to have a value add for you guys and make sure it makes sense.
Different but related topic. Can we get or I could get it as part of the security group, a monthly or quarterly report as to the incidents that have occurred?
On this device?
No, just forget the device.
Oh, prior, yeah, it'd be,
Based on
they'd be.
what's going on now
Yeah.
and how you're
They're all
collecting
paper
data.
copy, and
Yeah,
and
but
normally.
I don't want a stack of paper.
A summary.
I'm looking for a summary that says in the last week, to 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, here's what's happened. And there have been 3 incidents.
And this is exactly how this came up.
I understand,
Yeah,
but
because what
that's-
this does is it tracks every
And
incident.
we don't see any of that
And
kind
it
of
gives you
stuff,
all these
if
re-
there
the
has
same
been or has
report
not
you're-
been any incidents.
Yeah. This gives you a pie chart, and it'll
Again,
tell you
I see
exactly where
it, I
your
see it more
incidents
as a
were.
management tool than
Yeah.
a tool for us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sarah, what, do you look at these, or do you see the incident reports?
I do see the incident reports, and activity logs, they're available for our review. I'm more interested in the incident reports, obviously, so that we can address any issue. Castle's paperless, or tries to be as paperless as possible, so we of course, like the technology, but it may not be a need for Pelican Preserve at this time.
Okay. But I would like to look into getting a periodic report, like, here's all the incidents that happened in the month of August.
Is that a privacy issue? That we- From,
He's saying no, and she's not sure.
There would have to probably be a need for blacking out maybe confidential information, but the
Okay.
overall view of the report would be not confidential.
Like, there's been 5 incidents in the last month, and
Right, and these
consisted
were
of
what they were related to.
whatever they are.
yeah, as
Leave
opposed
out-
to the
Went out
resident's
Johnny
name.
Smith.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Back into somebody's mailbox.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't
Now,
know
incidents
that
like
Johnny
that,
Smith
normally,
did it.
anything that comes up that's a major incident, per se incident, I mean, it's usually, we're gonna discuss it immediately. I'm gonna
Sure,
know
sure.
something happened here, and we usually fire off an email, and we'll go back and forth and say, okay, what happened, how was it resolved, was it an issue we need to worry about, was there liability involved, was there assets involved, and then we kind of resolve it that way.
Sure.
Again, this is exactly the kind of question people ask us, it's like, you know, you can accumulate a bunch of paper, but this thing will actually give you those reports in a digital format and give you a pie chart, like exactly where the incidents were. They'll actually link to the report,
We may
pictures.
not have enough incidents to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, let's,
If there's
homes, you might.
Well, that's why I'm asking. 'cause
If there's a
we
major
don't
incident,
see it.
it'll get around by word of mouth
Oh,
faster
yeah.
than
Well, but then you
this.
wanna know the details.
Yeah, right, right.
That's
Well,
what I'm getting
My
at.
suggestion is that Sarah, you provide, or that Ron be provided with the summaries for some period of time, and let's see how that works.
Take a look at it, okay. Sounds like a
A
plan.
redacted summary.
Yes, yes,
Redacted summary.
yeah, I don't need
Yeah.
to know any
Like,
personal
if there's a
information.
serious incident,
Mhm.
and there's a report written, is that provided to anybody in the community at this point?
Right now, the report comes to me. And it's a impact paper report, so usually I will turn that around if I need to and get Sarah involved, and then provide her a hard copy of that, but again, knock on wood, we don't seem to have those issues here, but, yeah, that's what would happen.
I know in the past, that Carol Brocky has gotten some reports of some of the major incidents, and she's worked with the police and getting word out to the
Right.
community that,
Like when there was that vandalism issue.
right, exactly.
in the Trentino treehouse.
So I know that some incidents have been broadcast,
Correct.
but, those haven't necessarily involved, us.
Yes.
And anytime that there's a major traffic incident, there's a police call made,
And
and,
that would have shown up,
And that-
I would assume, on
Yeah.
one of your reports.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
All right,
Dan,
thank you.
thank you.
Anything else that you wanted
I'm
to
good.
bring up? Okay, thank
Thanks,
you very
Dan.
much,
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you very much for that demo.
Oh,
That
not a
was-
problem,
That was
not a
very
problem.
cool.
Thanks.
Let's see, what else do I wanna talk? I met with some of the, association, a lot of people have gone already, of Sienna. I gave you guys a written summary of what that was, that occurred. This has to do with the intersection of Trieste and Pelican Preserve Boulevard. They're more interested in controlling what happens on the preserve path than what happens at that intersection. And they really wanted to address those issues first before talking to us about fixing that intersection. So they're gonna pursue that somewhat further. They got some legitimate concerns, and so I'm gonna keep the dialogue open with them and follow through over time. But I don't think there's gonna be any near-term action in terms of working on that intersection. Okay. We had a meeting with Sarah this week specifically concerning communication. We talked about that briefly. One of the things that we've decided to do for the working group is, as things occur from a safety or security perspective that we would like for the community to hear about, and we're gonna write that up in a narrative form. If we need to have attachments or pictures or whatever, do that, give it to Sarah, and she will publish it to the entire community. My question to you guys is, do you wanna see those kinds of things before we give them to Sarah? Now what that translates to potentially is a delay of a month, potentially,
Yeah.
in getting information out.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just wanted to get your feel for that kind of stuff. I mean, right now, I'm thinking of that traffic sign and putting out results of, by the way, the last month, we've had the traffic sign located here. Here's what's happened, so many vehicles were clocked going over such and such speed limits, things of that nature.
Yeah, I see anything.
You know, I know that you would need to see that beforehand, but if there's anything more than that, perhaps, we would wanna come back to you guys, potentially. Don't know.
It seems to me that maybe that's a judgment call on your part.
Okay.
If you think it's a kind of a, something that is obviously, we'd wanna put out, like the traffic signs.
Right.
But there, I could picture, I guess, I'm not quite sure what they would be, but some
I-
incident that.
Nothing
that
specifically
you
comes
might-
to mind, but
Yeah,
we might
that
come
you
up
might.
with that.
might
What
want.
I will do is, do it anyway. Whatever we give to Sarah, we'll give through Diane to everybody.
Okay.
So you guys get it before the community gets it, depending on when you send the emails out.
Yeah.
So you'll get it a little bit ahead of time, so you get a little bit of a heads up
Yep.
as to what we're putting out. Okay. We're making some interesting progress. We were looking at two different things. One is the post orders, okay? We're having a meeting next week with Securitas to go over the details of that. And some of you guys have given us some very significant and good comments on the post orders. We're gonna meet with Securitas in your conference room, I think it's next Thursday, if I remember correctly. So, and we'll see how that comes out. I'm looking forward to that. We'll get together, go through the post orders. We've also looked at, some of our folks have looked at the information that Sarah gives out to new residents and renters. There's several documents that she gives out now, that she also gives out new residents information class, I guess you'd call it, periodically. So we're looking at all those things, and I think we're gonna come back and we'll work with Sarah on this, how to rearrange some of that stuff to be a little bit more informational and to emphasize the things that we think need to be emphasized about safety and speeding and following the golf cart rules and registering the golf carts. I don't know if you saw Sarah's last email that came out, she did emphasize the fact that all golf carts need to be registered, and we're still looking at that on how to ensure that we get at least a 95% registration rate, at least, if not higher than that, and how to accomplish that, okay? So we're making lots of progress. Judy has done a lot of nice work reviewing those documents and providing some very good comments and suggestions on how to make that process better. So we're doing that. And I think that's all I wanted to talk about. Any questions from you guys? It's late, I know.
Question, okay. All right. Thank you, Ron.
You're welcome.
Sarah, you're on.
The uplighting.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have submitted the PDF prior to coming to the meeting, but my electrician is an electrician, so it took him a while to get them together, and so I picked them up on the way here. I have 3 copies is all he provided me, that I don't know if you would like to look at them while we talk about it.
We can look at one.
And then I'll scan in a copy and make sure that it gets to you to send to everybody else.
Herb?
So the LED uplighting at the Pelican Preserve entrance on Tree Line, not Colonial, which is done already. The proposal that was given last year was no longer current due to the changes of cost of LEDs, and also reevaluating some of what was previously proposed to make it a different look. With the street lights, or the street lights coming in, we don't feel that that's gonna be an issue, but also means that they don't think the poles are necessary anymore, which was like, I think 12,000 something for those, to add 2 poles, just in the front and median. So we're re-looking at it because, originally they had talked about putting lights just on the sign. We have lights on the signs currently that are grandfathered in. They're no longer allowed in the county. Now, if they do a monument sign, it has to be an overhang on top of the monument. So if we remove those, we can never get that look back. So when talking to West Coast Lighting, we feel like we should leave that in place at the front, south entrance, and put in some 76-watt LED lights for the palms behind the sign. So you'll have the lit sign, and then the palms will be streaming the light behind it. Same on the north side, add the 3 76-watt LED lights on just the palms on that side. Another option that I thought would look good, and we're gonna do a test on it tonight, installed some LED lights on the pergola right there. It's gonna run 2 ways, so it runs with the pergola. It's option number 5. So you'll have the palm lights behind the sign, and then also you'll have the pergolas on both sides of the monument lit up. Not as bright for a softer ambiance, but it'll light that walkway. We think it'll look really neat. So, and then option 4 is going to do just the 2 floodlights on the center monument fountain when you're entering. And then, the last option is if we want to continue that look with the pergolas that are down a little ways at that second fountain, would be an additional $3,300 for that option, number 5. Depending on how it looks tonight when he lights it up, and I'm gonna get some pictures, I think that this would really make us stand out. I haven't seen many people light up their pergolas, their communities. A couple in Naples have it, and it looks really nice. And I think with the lights on the sign, the palms lit up behind it, the palms lit up on the other side, your fountain coming in the center, It would be a really nice look, and exactly what I think Pelican has been wanting is just to stand out there. So in total, it's $9,930, and I think I heard Chris say that she had put 12,000 and change in for that original with the 2 big light poles, but without needing those, I don't think that we need to spend that, so.
As a side question, what's the status of the traffic light?
The status that I received from WCI a couple days ago was that the plans have been approved, and now they're going to bid.
Oh.
They don't have a date.
Good, okay.
So, is there a planning date for when they'll start
No.
actual installation? Okay,
Not until they get the bids back.
okay.
So anyway, this is my recommendation after meeting with West Coast and reviewing a lot of the light options. We thought this would be the nicest choice for the uplighting at the main entrance.
So which ones?
Which
Which ones you put in
I'd like to do
tonight?
all of the options,
Well, I understand,
all
but
5.
you're installing a few things tonight, you said.
We're going to do the pergolas,
that?
the option number 3.
Option
Number 5 are the
3.
smaller ones
Okay, that's up by the
inside the
front.
gates.
This is tree line.
Right.
So it's gonna be the pergolas on each side of the monument, on the south side of Tree Line and Pelican Preserve.
Right.
Okay,
So
that's
they're gonna
3.
install those. It's gonna be a less, like I said, a less wattage, because we wanted it to be a softer ambiance.
630.
Okay.
So this is a total of everything that you recommended here? The
This is
90
everything in total,
The 9,900?
right. And then if we decided to pick 1 or 2, I had them option it out, so we could
Mhm,
pick 1 or
sure.
2 or 3. But I think that all 5 would create the total vision.
So going back, so option 3 is the one you're installing tonight?
Yes.
Or be operational tonight?
Yes.
Nothing else?
Nothing else.
Okay, okay.
The palms are already lit with lighting that you can't really see. Replacing it with the 76-watt LED will just really make them pop.
Okay.
Cool.
So-
If there's a decision, down the road to put a monument on the other side, how does that, there's nothing here that would interfere with a monument going in and.
Nope. I don't see why, with the palms there, I imagine it would just go right in front of the palms, just like the south side, so it shouldn't interfere. The reason why adding the option 5 pergola, on either side, when you're
Mhm.
walking into the community, is
Mhm.
because there's no electricity there, so they'd have to run to get some there to operate those. So that's why it's a little bit of a higher price. Everywhere else, it's already accessible.
Gotcha.
I also talked to him about coding, if this would be a code issue, because sometimes when you're putting lights at the corner, where it, and they came back and said that if they had to permit, it may be an additional $600 or so, but after speaking with, his supervisor, they don't feel like it's going to interfere. So they don't see any reason for permitting, because it's not gonna be pointing out, it'll be coming in, so it shouldn't affect the streets or anything, so you guys will be good for coding and permitting as well.
Okay. So do you wanna go out tonight and see what it looks like, or
Well.
do we wanna go ahead?
Yeah.
We have been waiting so.
I know. It sounds like.
To do this.
I agree.
I was
say-
almost a little worried about putting them out there just for a test, cause I'm like, the residents are gonna get a taste of that, and then
Yeah.
it's gonna go away.
Well, they take, their Christmas lights go down every year,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I agree. I think we ought to go forward with this thing. John and Chris, what do you think?
Well, they haven't seen this package.
Yeah.
You haven't seen the package.
I don't know if
Yeah, I have not seen the quotes, but any entrance lighting, I think, makes a nice impact.
Yeah. And, people have been complaining, I get complaints all the time about us
Yeah.
not having adequate lighting out there.
Can you send that PDF to Diane, so Diane can quick send it out to
Absolutely.
Chris and John?
Do you have a scanner?
I cannot hear you well, Nancy.
No,
I'm at.
we're having them send you guys the quote with the pictures.
Okay, great, thank you.
Should've thought of us,
Yeah.
I-
Do I hear a motion to accept Sarah's recommendation for the lighting?
So moved.
Nancy
Second.
moves, a second from her. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Nice.
4-0.
Okay.
I love it.
Go
So
ahead.
when's it gonna be done?
Okay, John, you're on.
I'll make mine extremely quick, and
Yep.
since we're running over, I contacted WCI's legal counsel, Cohen and Grigsby, and talked to Chris Davies regarding the new agreement. I gather it is now in his hands.
Yes.
He said he could have something hopefully by early next week or by the end of next week, which I think is excellent. The other thing I suggested to him, the red line agreement, there's a lot of changes going back and forth, that maybe we want a nice clean agreement. He'll do it both ways, he said.
Mhm.
He'll do a red line agreement with the changes, but then furnish us a clean agreement so we can just read it, as a brand new agreement if we want to look at it that way. They're still going to use the old agreement, maintenance agreement, as a reference because that's the way it was started, and I know that that's the way WCI would like to look at it.
Mhm.
But I think from our standpoint in review, it's a lot easier to review it as a nice, clean agreement.
I agree. And the one they were working off of, at least the one that Tony sent to me, was, needed lots of work.
Well, and I think you said that, and,
Yeah.
he agreed. He
Yeah.
said, and I'm not sure of, maybe you have some input, Phil. Is there a reason why WCI's legal counsel feels needs a lot of work? Is that something that
I don't,
Tony?
no, I don't know why they suddenly decided to do it. I have no insight into that.
Well, in talking with him, at least he seems to want to get it done.
Yeah.
So I offered to him if he needs any assistance from the advisory committee or working with the CDD, let us know. Let's get this thing done. It's been going on for the last year.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
in regards to Exhibit B,
Yep.
unless Sarah has some, any additions or changes, I think the last update was the one that we presented at the last meeting.
Right. And that is a working document, and I think it's well done, and the numbering of the items on it, I think, is excellent.
And yeah, that's something, Chris, you may want to look at in some of your reports, just so if we're on a phone meeting, you can say, item number 32, that's what we're talking about.
Okay.
Just put a
Okay.
column in your Excel program with numbers.
Okay.
Okay, anything else, John?
No, that's it, very quick.
Okay, thank you.
And I will be hopefully around for the next meeting, and maybe we can have a asset meeting before our advisory meeting.
Okay.
When are you getting back to Florida?
I will try to get back before the next advisory meeting.
I'm talking about more important thing. When are you gonna be available for golf? Come on.
The day before the meeting.
Okay, Gage,
Wait a minute, did you do a motion when I was out of the room?
Yes.
yes,
Did you read?
I moved and Herb seconded.
Herb second.
to accept Sarah's recommendation
lighting
for the
proposal.
lighting, and Herb seconded it, it was passed 4.
Okay,
For
all
me.
right, thank you.
Okay. Gateway meeting attendance, we've got it plotted out through October. We should probably, Diane, do we know when the meetings are in November?
Yes, let me grab that. It's, yeah, that, actually, I have.
Should be the 5th and the 19th. but
5th and the
when's
19th,
Thanksgiving?
yeah.
When's
Are
Thanksgiving?
they the Thursdays?
Let
Yeah.
me just-
First and third.
Let me just double check, because sometimes if there's a existing conflict with district.
Oh, yeah.
When's Thanksgiving? Because they may not do it that, well, they won't do it on the,
No.
No, they
won't
won't
do
do
it.
26.
is that Thanksgiving Day? Yeah.
Okay.
All
All
right,
right,
they-
November is the 5th and 19th.
5th and 19th?
And December is the 3rd and 17th.
Okay, well, let's plot it out through November anyway.
I'll do 5.
Ron?
I can do 5th, I was gonna say, I can't do the 19th.
You can't do the 19th?
I can't
do
do
the
the
5th.
19th. I'm in Idaho.
I'll do,
Atlanta.
I'll do
Oh,
the,
that's
I'll do
right.
the 19th. Okay, so, Ron, you're gonna do the 5th?
Yes.
Okay, November 5th is Ron, November 19th is Phil. Okay,
And December,
Committee member requests and audience comments. We exhausted everybody. Do we have any comments from the audience? Okay. Next meeting is October 8th. I'm assuming, John, you say you're gonna be back?
Yes, I intend to be back. That's my game plan as of
Okay.
now.
I cannot be at that meeting, so we need to be able to get a,
Is Bob gonna be
quorum. Bob, are you, oh, Bob's not on the phone. Chris, you said you're getting back on the 8th, is that right?
I'm getting back on the 4th.
On the 4th, so
I'll
you,
be there at the meeting on the 8th.
okay, so we should, anybody else who can't make it? Yeah,
I'll be,
okay.
no, I'll be there. I'll be
Okay, so we, no problem. I will try, if I can, to call in. I'm not quite sure where I'll be at that point, but I'll give you my number, Diane, if I'm.
Okay, all right.
And, I'm sorry to miss the meeting with Stephen, but, that's it. Anybody else with comments or we are all exhausted? Nancy?
Just one,
Sure.
this has nothing to do with this, this is just a quick comment that mark your calendar for September 30th. We'll have one of the candidates running for city council. Ward 6 election is, to replace our council member, is in November.
Yeah.
We'll have Gail Anthony, who's the candidate here, and we'll have the mayor, the former mayor, and we think one of the county commissioners as well. If we can get the word out to have people come, it'll be just before Wild Wednesday. Even if people don't vote here, we're the ones that go red-shirted to the city council chambers, so the more they see us, you know, the more powerful the message I think we send.
Is that something that the Alliance could put out, or is that a little gamey, given
I
past
think-
history?
No, I think we'll be able to, we'll either
Yeah.
talk to Terry about putting something out. We're gonna do flyers out on everybody's door the night before,
Okay.
and we think that we'll get it communicated, but the more word that we get out that we'll have, it'll be just before Wild Wednesday,
Like,
so.
what, 4 o'clock or 3
It'll
o'clock?
start at 3 and go to
3.
4:30. But it's an opportunity to
meet the candidate.
to meet,
Yeah.
yeah, and this particular candidate was the former administrator for Lee Memorial Hospitals, and pretty well qualified, I think.
I'm sorry I won't be in town, maybe the
So-
day before. Okay. Anything further?
Before we sign off,
Yeah.
it is still quiet. Nancy, just a personal note, in regards to this, utility easement where they're putting, the ponds are putting this, I think it's a generator or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I sent an email to Ron because he's going up to see, our neighbor.
Yeah, Hank.
Anyway, is this easement between 2 properties?
I think
Ron
it is,
Just
isn't it?
Ron
on
has
one
a
property?
picture
I
of
don't
it.
know. And
Well, the easement-
all of the board has only given information to Hank, that's all.
I've got a map in front of me, John, that I was given earlier. The easement itself is not on Hank's side yard, it's his neighbor's side yard has got the easement. but
Okay,
the-
well, Hank's number is 505.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Where is
that's
it?
yeah.
Between who?
If you're looking at Hank's house, to his right, that house there,
This is
Nancy
me.
Huisett.
Hold on,
Okay.
let's see, this is
That's the corner.
Richard,
That's you?
Marie,
Oh, I'm
no,
sorry.
that's me, that's Carol Brockie,
Okay,
this one is Lopez,
Lopez. that's Hank?
that's Hank,
Okay.
and then over here is Conditch.
Okay, so it doesn't affect him. Looks like it's Lopez's house. That's where the
Okay.
easement is.
Yeah, well, Don and Leslie, maybe,
Yeah.
if this
Yeah,
is
Don
right.
Lo- Okay,
Yep.
but the electrical box that they're gonna be messing around with is in front of Hank's house. So there may be something new installed there apparently.
Well, this is a 3-foot, according to the email, it looks like it's a 3-foot concrete base with something on top of it.
Yeah,
I
that's
know we
correct.
shouldn't
Yeah.
be talking at this meeting, but at least we're on a conference call here.
Yeah.
Yeah, the answer is yes, that's what it
I'll
is.
have the board send something to Lopez as well.
Yeah, good idea.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Phil, for letting me chime in there. on
Yeah, that's fine.
clearing
That-
up this-
Diane, you needn't include that in your.
Yeah, this is not,
This is not our, okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you soon,
Bye.
John.
See you, so long, thanks.